Hi, hello, it's me, Julian Greystoke, indie author and purveyor of random knowledge. A while ago, I made a video, 2 videos? All about writing physical pain and injury, but then I had a viewer ask me, hey Julian, what about emotional pain? And I was like, ooh, good idea. So here I am with Julian's tips for writing emotional pain. We're talking about showing, not telling here today, everyone. Let's say you've gone and given your character some
emotional damage.
What do? How do you get that across to your reader? Now, as always with these videos, I like to remind everyone that while I am an indie author with some books under my belt, that does not make me the god of writing. So these are just tips that I've found helpful to me and might be helpful to you. Not tips that are going to work every single time for every single person and every single book. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is probably the most important part, because if I save the most important part until the end, the whole rest of the video won't make a lot of sense. The most important part is to remember that every single one of your characters is probably going to display emotional pain in a different way. A big mistake of a book that I read recently was that the author had their 2 main characters react to emotional pain in exactly the same way. And as a result, it felt really lazy, and it felt like it was just there because the plot needed them to react this way and not because it was natural for their characters. So the first thing to remember is to really know your characters and know how they react to emotional pain, because let's be honest, we're authors, we're going to put them through some emotional pain. So how do they react to emotional pain? I've written down some ideas, but there are many, many more. Do they withdraw? Do they lock up? Do they get mad? Do they start crying? Do they hide it? There are so many ways that characters can handle emotional pain. Using a couple of my own characters as example, in Adventure Mage, my upcoming book this year, the character of Maeve reacts to emotional pain by knee-jerk needing to do something. She's a reactor. So if something's going wrong and making her upset, she's like, I need to do something about it immediately. And if I can't do something about it immediately, I am an impossible ball of stress and no one can handle me. That's Maeve. Valentine is very different. He's more of a withdrawer. He's more of a quiet guy. If he's in emotional pain, he just tends to go, oh, I guess that's the way it is. So here we've got 2 characters with very different ranges of how they deal with emotional pain. Okay, here's the next tip. Let's say you need a character in emotional pain, but for plot reasons, they need to act contrary to the way that you've been having them act before. Like maybe they're a pain hider, but now you need them to have a big emotional reaction. If that has to happen for your plot, you need to figure out a good in-character reason for them to react differently than they have been in the past. Or you have to go change it in the past so that they react the way that you need them to react now. But for me, as a heavy character writer, characters supersede plot at all times. So if I can't get my characters to do something that my plot needs, the plot needs to change, not the characters. My next tip is to look at people in real life. Yes, people watching, studying other humans is the way of the author. See how your friends, your family, and even yourself react to emotional pain, and then give that to a character. My next tip is to remember that different people have different thresholds for emotional pain. Just like different people can handle different levels of physical pain, it's the same with emotional pain. So what knocks out one character, another character might be able to push their way through. So that's something else to know about your characters, is what is their threshold, what pushes them over. My next tip is don't be afraid to use cliche descriptions when you're starting out. You can always go back and fix them later. So if you're trying to get across that a character is sad and you say something like tears rolled down her cheeks, that's okay. You can come back and make it more visceral and more meaningful later as you figure out that character, especially if you're a pantser. Next tip is to remember that emotional pain comes with physical symptoms a lot of the time. Symptoms like a tight or sore throat, pain in the chest, a headache, a stomach ache. So figure out how your character might physically manifest that pain and then describe that to your readers. The more that you can get them in and feeling what your character is feeling, the more you will have your readers feeling that emotional pain as well. This one's especially a tip from me as a pantser, how I learn my characters and deal with their emotional pain. Because I don't plan anything beforehand, I go ahead and the first time that I put them in emotional pain, I find out how they deal with it. And it's often a surprise, which might seem absolutely absurd to the plotters out there, and I grant you, it sounds weird even to me to say it out loud, but that's how I do it. And once I figure out, once I learn, once they show me how they experience emotional pain, then I remember that, I write it down if I have to, and I can bring it back up as they experience more emotional pain, maybe evolve it as they go and grow as a character. If you're a plotter though, you can definitely know this beforehand. Figure out as you're making those character bios, those character sheets. That should be one of the things on the character sheet. Hey, how does my character deal with emotional pain? And you can even get nitty gritty and be like, how do they deal with anger versus how they deal with sadness versus how they deal with envy? All of these things. You can figure that out ahead of time, or if you're like me, just let the characters show you as you put them in those situations. And as always, if you are a plotter and you get to a point where you're writing along and the way that you had previously thought the character was going to react isn't the way they turn out to react, that's okay too. You can modify, you can change. And finally, my last tip is, especially if you're new, something like this. The emotional thesaurus can be really helpful. Now, I don't really use this anymore because I've gotten pretty good at expressing the emotional pain of my characters, but it's definitely very helpful, especially if you're starting out. Never be afraid to use tools, friends. So let's just open to a random page. We have desperation. Then it defines desperation at the top and then gives us physical signals that you can integrate into your character or your story. Feverish, overbright eyes, a darting gaze, quick movements, an inability to sleep or eat, finger twitches, compulsive repetitive movements. And of course, remember when you are using something like the emotional thesaurus that you're not just copy pasting onto the page. Like say you picked quick repetitive movements for a way that your character reacts. Don't just say he had quick repetitive movements, or he moved quickly, or he kept repeating the same gesture. A lot of the examples in the emotional thesaurus are telling and you want to get to showing. So say you chose the movements, you want to get the repetitive movements. So the table bumped as he jiggled his leg up and down, or he hadn't realized that he was drumming his fingers until she pointed it out to him. Something like that, a little bit less telly. Again, I'm just pulling these examples out of my ass, so I'm sure you can do better, but avoid just copy pasting from the emotional thesaurus. It has so many. So if you are struggling and you're like, I want to get this across to my reader, but I don't know exactly how my character would behave, start out with something like this. And then once you have figured out how your character behaves, write that down. Even if you're a pantser, write that down so you can keep track of it. And when you come to another emotional moment with your character, you'll know what to do. So those were my tips for writing emotional pain. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that at least some of them will be helpful to you as you go forward and emotionally torture your characters, as we are all so prone to do.
This is the way.
Don't forget that you can purchase my books available now on Amazon, plus I'll have another book coming out sometime this year, 2023. If you like fantasy stories with really deep characters and fun adventures, my books are the ones for you. You can also support me over on Patreon, where all of your donations go towards helping me self-publish my own books, and also a little bit towards just helping me live my life. But also you get access to content not seen here on the regular channel, plus other cool rewards at the various patron levels. There's also tons of videos here on the channel already, so if you want more writing advice from me, there is a playlist for that. So go check it out. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see all of you again next time with whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Bye!